Alright, welcome back to the channel. There's something very cool sitting in our shop. The 1989 points champion. And now we not only have the American Outlaw diesel powered monster truck in our shop, we have Equalizer. It is an extreme honor to have this thing, especially have it sitting next to my truck in our shop. Michael Vodders Sr. restored this thing, rescued it from the grave, you might say, a few years back at the Monster Truck Hall of Fame induction ceremony. He unveiled it. I think it was when Gary Cook was getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. He's the guy that originally built this Equalizer truck. If you're an old school monster truck fan, you know about this truck. It was hard to beat, state-of-the-art design back in the day, just was beyond anything anybody had ever done. Most trucks were leaf springs. This thing come out with the triangulated cradle in the front, off of like a road grader, coil springs. It meant business. The goal is this truck has to be done for an event April 16th, and we got drafted to get this thing revived and down there. Said I would love to take this truck. That is cool, but it is going to run and drive under its own power, or I'm not doing it, because that's ridiculousnit. It's got like 7 rods in the motor. It didn't have any valve train on top of it. I'll show you here. It was for display purposes only. So right there, no rockers. Camshaft is broken on it. We robbed the blower, everything off of it. A friend of ours, Scott Hess, is actually putting that on an engine for me. The axles. I just popped the cap off the axles. There is nothing internally in the planetaries on the outer ends here or axle shaft wise. I come around to this side here, right here. This planetary cap, I believe all the bolts are stripped out in it, so they're just like sitting in there. Some of them are literally tack welded in, you see, and the cap is welded on itself. Is literally welded onto the hub. To make it run, it does have a fuel tank in it back here. It actually has a radiator up front, which we're going to make a radiator somewhere, somehow. Radiator's right here, going back. We're going to make a radiator, if it's that one or another one, we're going to make that work. We got to run wiring. He had the toggle switch for the rear steer setting back here. Right here, so we got to get that into the cab. Run an engine, transmission. We think it's just a dummy. I got to pop these side shields off right here, and we got to check. We got a transmission to put in it. And here it looks good. Race seat, got tubes going down, steering wheel, got gauges. Of course, they're not hooked to anything. I mean, there's literally no wiring in the cab of this thing, so that's going to be a challenge in itself, getting some stuff up in here. But what I was really looking at, Ron hopped in here the other day and sat in the seat. This thing is just tacked to the cage, and it looks, I mean, it looks good. And this right here would appear as though it goes through that aluminum down to the frame of the truck, but it does not. It's literally just sitting here. There's a lot to do on this in a little bit of time. I think we got 3 weeks maybe. I'm going to cut the welds off of this cap so we can get it off, and I want to make sure what's in there. One bolt in it, that's cool. Oh yeah. Hey. This thing has 3 planetary gears in it, this carrier. That's pretty cool. The other carrier on the other side, it only had 2 in it. The other one had been robbed. This cap right here, it literally has a bunch of dummy bolts in it. It has all these bolts right here around the outside, tack welded in. And there was literally 1 bolt that actually threaded into this hub right here. So in my opinion, what's going to happen is I'm going to get helicoils, and I'm going to put in this thing right here. So I helicoiled the American Outlaw over there a little bit. A couple of them that were loose because I didn't like it. And I'll probably drill these out and helicoil them too. So that one's ready to come off. Now this one, if you take a look-see here, it's got duct tape, black duct tape, wrapped around the inside of that hub. I'm guessing that there's a reason there's duct tape around that hub. It's probably hiding something. It's probably broke. Not sure what yet, but I'm gonna pull it off. We're gonna find out. And that is why right there. So he welded this thing back together. I mean, it's anything but pretty because it's cast, and it's really hard to weld cast and make it look nice. So he covered it up by putting a little duct tape on it, but it honestly looks functional, so that's cool. The spindle there that's still on it looks like it's all right. So got to pop all those bolts out of that spindle, slide that thing out, and then I've got an axle shaft over here. I'll show you. So these axle shafts were a pair that I have from when I got stuff from Paul Wickelman. That's the inside axle shaft right there, and that is an outside shaft. I'm told that that shorter shaft is an outside for this truck right here. But we're gonna see lengthwise how far off it is. So the axle shaft I have laying over here that I thought was the right one, turned out it's been cut off and welded and they've ground on it. They've shortened it themselves. I'm sure that's a tough one. This shaft here is a very long one and it's like brand new. I'm gonna see if it'll go in here. Oh man, that thing splines in and everything. That's craziness. But then there's supposed to be a ball and claw, which I don't have any of these steel balls to go in here. This is called a ball and claw design. So basically, these two claws meet like this right here, and there's steel balls that go in between them. So I've been on the phone with Mike Vodders and did me some learning here the last little bit on axle shafts. So I'll show you what I figured out. So this shaft on the right here is one I got from Paul Wickelman for my truck, and it appeared that it'd be the same. It's the same spline and everything, but it's just a little bit too long because it doesn't go all the way in to where this thing will turn. So this shaft on the left is approximately the same length that we need, but the ball and claw right here, there's supposed to be steel balls there, that cage is bigger, so that won't work either. So I thought I had the parts to put this together, but what the deal is these axles have been narrowed on this truck, and so I don't have. That truck is still full width, how they come out of the crane or whatever those axles come out of. So my axle shafts fit that one, I think. So Vodders is gonna send me some parts for this sucker, and we're gonna get it together one way or the other. I noticed some more things about this truck too, which I'll show you in the future here. It's got some funky things about it that we're gonna have to fix in order for it to be drivable, but we're gonna get her done. So Matt showed up to lend a hand here. I'm gonna pull this cover that they got on there with all the championship and all that stuff off, because that allows you to access this frame. Oh, got the side panels off here. Kind of seeing what we're looking at transmission wise. It is definitely easily accessible. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool design. So there's a coupler in there. Got kind of a tack weld thing on it. I'm not sure what I'm going to get into there. Telling me. So he welded. Do you have a tack weld on that side? No. There's a tack weld to this sleeve on that side.
I don't have nothing over here.
So I wonder if that's something that will even turn, or if there's something goofy going on there. Because that coupler, it should be like a two-piece coupler, and this slides one way or the other.
I would say that's what this is for, to stop it if it slides.
So I need to undo that Allen of this collar right here. Okay, we're running into another problem, which I'm expecting some of those to happen here. So the transmission's a turbo 400 in this truck right there, and it goes to an SCS drop box. We got a slip, it's got a slip yoke in the back of it because it's a 2-wheel drive transmission. So they use these couplers in a lot of monster truck applications, and Matt has one here. Let me see that. So these couplers, this goes in the transmission, this goes on the transfer case. And these couplers butt up like this. And they allow just a little bit of walk, but not much, not near like a U-joint would. This coupler right here slides over these two sets of splines. That's what couples it. So you got this right here. Fairly simple deal. For whatever the reason, this spline here isn't going on that transfer case right now. And Mike had a deal tack welded onto it to kind of hold it on there, make it look like it would. But this works for what it was doing, but it don't work for what we're going to do with it. So I got back today and I started getting a list of what I need to try to get Equalizer to where it'll kind of move and load, maybe somewhat safely. There's a lot of little things. I mean, he did an awesome job. Mike and Mikey, I think, and whoever helped Trey when they redid this, they did an awesome job of making it look like it originally was. It's probably actually nicer than it originally was. And everything, I mean, it has lines running here, there, and everywhere that look like they should be functional, but a lot of them aren't actually hooked up. So one of the big things I noticed was the brake caliper down here does not have any brake pads in it, this Willwood caliper. And I also noticed that this line was just kind of sitting on there. So that's cool. Gonna have to investigate that. It does have master cylinders for the brakes, so hopefully those are usable. I actually did a little grinding on this yoke right here, which is kind of dark, but I ground on the shaft, and now this slip yoke actually slides on. So I think that's all going to be usable right there to hook the transmission up. So essentially there's no wiring in it, so I'm going to have to get a panel put in the cab. It's just going to take like an ignition switch, a switch for the fans, and then start button, and then I have to run the rear steer in the cab. I think what's going to happen is I'm going to mount a battery back here somewhere. Since the steering pump is there, the starter on the motor will be up here. Keep all my wiring to the back as much as I can, just run into the cab what has to be. Try to keep it back there clean. The fun thing I got going on is, last evening I messed around a little bit. I investigated the orbital valve in this truck for the front steering. Mr. Michael Vaughters had this right here, piece of inner tube, wrapped around that orbital valve with some hoses stuck in it. And that was just for looks. It looked like it was hooked up, but it wasn't. So I investigated what ports go to what on this orbital valve. This valve actually has an LS port in it, which stands for load sensing, I've figured out. So it's for like a hydro boost application. If you were to run your brakes or whatever, it makes sure you always had brakes, make sure it was bypassing some fluid in this valve. Anyhow, I hooked this orbital valve all up, and what I hooked it to, since we don't have an engine that runs, is this old electric over hydraulic pump I got right here. It's off of one of our old dump trucks. I got a battery sitting underneath there. And now, we're gonna see if the steering works. Is it gonna work, Ron? We're gonna find out, huh? Yeah. So if we're just having a bunch of junk laying around I threw together, I don't know if you noticed, it steers. It don't steer fast, but any steering is better than what steering we had. I think we got a couple leaks Ron was showing. It looks like the orbital's seeping in the cab just a little bit. It's dripping out right up here, right to there. But overall, I'm going to consider that good enough to load on and off the trailer, maybe drive around a little bit. We're going to move on to the next thing. So here's what I'm doing today. I fabbed this battery mount right here up, this tray. This bar was here. It's had something tacked to it at some point in time. Not sure what that was. Don't have time to go look at pictures. Not sure where the battery was. This is where the battery's going to be. I made a piece of plate steel underneath here, tacked it in, actually welded it in. It's welded pretty good. It's got what looks like a tack up there. Made some holders. Got a Dodge battery hold down. Going to stick the battery in it here in a minute. I got the battery mounted in there. Battery tray made, mounted. We're working on, I got the fuel pump mounted. This was an existing bracket they had here, so I figured why not use it. Actually got a line ran back up underneath to the fuel tank. Matt's working on hooking up a ground cable over here and just knocking things off the list. Another day, another dollar. Worked all day. Now it's getting into evening. It's like 5 o'clock. Got back to the shop. Jeg's order showed up. What I ordered was, I ordered a shift cable bracket for a Turbo 400 because I didn't have one of those, and ordered a shifter cable because we need a shifter cable for this. Now it's making me curious that I start looking at this transmission. If I get a stock torque converter like I'm supposedly going to have, if it's going to be right. Because I look up in there and that torque converter looks like it's had some tabs welded on it or something. There ain't many bolts that hold that transmission in. I'm going to unbolt it and take that transmission out. The legend Scott Hess, he's got the engine for this. He's putting the blower and all the goodies on it to where all I got to do is drop the engine down in here. But what I'm getting at is, when he was in his heyday being crazy, he was like the first Tom Mintz. He said they changed the transmission every night in his Barefoot Racer truck. It was a Turbo 400 like this, and he said he changed it in, I think he said 15 minutes they could have a tranny out and a new one in. So we're going to see how long this takes to get this one out, because it's not even all the way hooked up. That's just a gutted case, but the converter's still heavy. Got the flywheel off. Converter. It's got those tabs on it. I'm just going to double check that the converter that's coming for this thing is going to work, so I don't have to use that one, and make sure that it fits that flywheel. So what I did today is I put a switch panel in it. I actually wired this switch panel up last night, maybe, and the night before. It took a lot of time, more wiring. Wiring takes a lot more time than you would think, is what I'm trying to say. So it's actually up there. I put that piece of Lexan over it to help shield it from the elements, since this truck doesn't have a windshield in it. Right over there is the switch panel. So that is probably way nicer than anything that was ever in this truck before. So got it mounted in good. That was kind of a pain in the butt. I welded tabs on the roll bar there and bolted it all to it. So the wiring is here. This wire right here. Right here. And I'm going to run it on the inside of that roll bar padding and down and on the inside of the frame rail back here to the back of this old girl. So, got the wires out of that loom are right here. I got to finish hooking those up. Another thing I did on this, I put a shifter cable in it. This red cable right here. Once the training gets done, I got to hook it up, make sure it's going to work. Shifter cable is installed to the old Hurst shifter, just like it had back in the day. So I got to put this cover back on that yet. Good to go. So what I'm doing now is I modified Michael Vaughters' mount. He had the RII kill box, the Total Communications kill box. I modified it and I had to move it forward because it was mounted on the side of the seat right there where that shifter's mounted. It was mounted right here, but it's going to block the second seat from being able to get up in there. So that mount right up there, I modified it to slide up in that roll bar that's been cut off, and it can be up there out of the road, and there'll be room for the second driver. So right here's the box, the Total Communications, The Killer by Total Communications. Right there it is. That box hangs in there. That's what remote shuts off these trucks so they don't run out through the crowd. This box obviously is not wired up, but it should go with the truck for looks for now. And then if that truck ever decides to race or do events, it's going to have a kill box in it again. So exciting times around here. Made a little jaunt back up here to Auburn this morning. Pick up this blower motor you see in the background. Look at this thing. This is way different than what we're used to. Little big block Chevy.